Welcome to Cherry Bekaert's podcast on improving financial performance of regional hubs through commercial process technology optimization. I'm Greg Miller, the leader of Cherry Bekaert's Government Transportation Group, and joining me is Jim Holman, the leader of Cherry Bekaert's Digital Advisory Strategy and Process Group.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me today.
The COVID-19 pandemic had an immediate and significant impact on airport traffic, and that impact continues today, with ACI projecting traffic to be 21% under pre-pandemic levels. And that equates to approximately $13 billion in anticipated lost revenue for 2022. Consequently, many airports are looking for ways to diversify revenue streams away from passenger traffic. And many of you are looking for ways to improve margins within non-aeronautical revenue streams. As airports look to implement these strategies, you're often faced with inefficient processes or outdated systems. Today, we're going to discuss aligning an optimized process model with a technology platform and strategy. The way airports reach their growth destination is through digital transformation. So, Jim, from a process and technology perspective, what's the current state of airport operations?
Well, traditionally, there's really been a outsourced or partnered approach with external service providers covering much of the airport's fee-for-service revenue stream. Really relates to historical practices where it's always been done this way. But much is also tied to manual, inefficient processes, outdated systems, what makes it really difficult or unprofitable to bring in-house revenue sources they're outsourcing already. Examples are things like fixed-based operator, FBO, and all of those revenue streams within that, advertising, parking, bars and restaurants, gift shops. There's a really long list. Greg, what are you seeing from the financial perspective?
Yeah, so I think we see pretty much the same thing on the financial side. So if you're talking about the monthly close process, we can see an extended close process that's not fully leveraging the existing systems. And that results in numerous Excel file workarounds that require someone to pull data from one system, then they repackage that and filter it and slice it and dice it. And then someone else has to review that. And from that information, a journal entry is built, and that journal entry is then posted to the system, and then somebody else has to review that again. So there's a lot of inefficiencies, like you mentioned, in that. And I think a lot of that has to do with, well, this is the way we've always done it. It doesn't seem broken, let's not fix it, kind of thing. But there's a lot of inefficiencies in there. Additionally, we're also seeing, even with a new IT platform out there, in the aeronautical space, there's a lot of regulated software that we have to use. So AIP reimbursements have to go through a particular system, and PFC reporting has to go through a particular system. So how can we get software that might work with Delphi or work with Source? So knowing these operational efficiencies, both on an operational side as well as a financial reporting perspective, Jim, why do you think that airports have been reluctant to focus on operational improvements or gaining efficiencies through operations?
Yeah, good question. I think there's really four primary reasons. Primarily, the current state of operational and financial processes is both not understood and it's not well defined. And then also you have a closed shop where airport business professionals tend to stay in the airport world for much of their careers. And it isn't easy to detect inefficiencies when so many mid-sized airports do the exact same thing the same way. There's a reliance on institutional knowledge, especially as you mentioned in accounting. And airports generally, as you mentioned, are risk adverse regarding change, especially in their back-end processes and systems.
Sure. So if you had an airport that was looking to try to optimize their processes or look at their IT platforms, what are some areas that you think that what airports should be doing to optimize their processes?
Yeah, so one way is a business process assessment. So what we're looking for there is for an airport to review and understand the current processes as they are, not as they want them to be, which is not an easy effort performed inside, since essentially airport departments and individuals will adjust their behavior unless it's really these types of projects are done by, say, outside digital transformation firm. It's useful to identify both pain points in areas where the team is spending the most time performing routine work. And really, routine is the emphasis there, where we're looking at critical processes to determine where can the airport eliminate unneeded, say, zero value tasks, automate low value tasks, and then lastly, delegate tasks to less expensive resources. Improving internal commercial and financial processes is always going to help, especially in areas you talked about, Greg, with regards to the month-end close. And then one area that's been very interesting in the past 6 months or so is airlines actually being receptive to be engaged with by the airports to learn more about the airlines' technology initiatives. Airlines are also trying to optimize and automate their processes. And there's some synergies there that the airports can take advantage of. Examples are things like self-reported data that drives invoicing and AP automation portals that airlines have introduced.
Yeah, so along that lines with technologies, with gaining those efficiencies or just to get a better insight into managing their operations, what have you seen for airports? What type of technologies that they've typically been investing in, and what impact have you seen on those investments on operational effectiveness?
Right. We've seen that most technology dollars has actually been geared more towards the customer experience or security initiatives. Allocating dollars to internal efficiencies or insights to better manage operations have had an impact on the customer experience. And we've seen that a lot with data and analytics. A few others are better, more advanced core financial solutions or ERPs, which are just more receptive to better analytics because they've got open interfaces. We see airport property and revenue management solutions that reduces the internal effort in billing airport fee-for-service customers and not just airlines. We've seen also some improvements within airport enterprise asset management or EAM solutions, which streamline asset management, maintenance, ticketing, and FAA mandated reporting. As mentioned earlier, fixed base operator or FBO solutions to automate general aviation billing, revenue recognition, and cash management of fuel and aviation service revenues can be really helpful. If you look at the amount of what they call one and done FBO customers, there's a lot of high volume, small dollar transactions that really traditionally have resisted automation, which is why a lot of airlines have left the FBO piece outsourced. The last one I wanted to touch on is human capital management, which used to be called HR payroll, but human capital management solutions, which can streamline payroll processing and securely protect employee confidential information. And one area in this current pandemic-fueled labor shortage is to assist in recruiting, onboarding, and employee retention, which airports are competing for some of the same high-tech, motivated, and skilled employees that we all are.
Wonderful. So when an airport decides that they're going to try to start looking at technology to implement some systems to help gain those efficiencies or insights into operations, what are some emerging technologies that airports should be looking at, and how should they go about looking at those?
I get these same questions from our airport clients. They basically say, we want to implement some new evolving emerging technologies. What should we do? And I say, well, hold a second. The first thing that you should do is that we really want you to look at your foundation and consider technology that's going to accelerate improvements in your core processes. A lot of that is not going to be the very popular or sexy technologies that you hear about, that you see on Twitter. It's going to be what they call the blocking and tackling. We really want them to perform. They can do it themselves in some cases, or hire an outside firm to do a software identification and evaluation project to help source solutions that are identified that are going to address and improve these processes. Specifically, what we look at are recent advancements within ERP, property and revenue management solutions, security and access control. A huge one, because of all these different mismatched pieces of technology, are solution integrations, and having an airport's IT department take ownership of connecting the pieces of technology, which reduces the burden and cost for outside service providers. And then lastly, everybody's favorite is BI and data analytics. If you can connect if you can choose the right solutions, you can integrate those solutions. You now can sit a BI and data analytics platform on top of that. That's going to get these airports technology and assess their data like they've never been able to do before.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about the current state on where things are, and that we need to look at our processes as the starting to be the building block, the foundation from which then we
Mhm.
can layer on a technology platform. And
Right.
then we talked about a little bit of what those platforms might be. But from all of your experience helping airports implement these systems, what are some of the best practices for airports to align their process improvements with their technology platforms to achieve their future state where they want the airport to grow?
Yeah, so because IT departments at airports and is pretty similar to what you see in state and local government and transportation generally, is that IT tends to run the servers. And what we'll see is that the airport operation and financial leadership will get out in front of IT. And then IT is end up playing in catch-up mode and is scrambling to provide the services and the talent to successfully and securely deploy those solutions. So we really like the airports start with an IT strategy and organizational assessment. This is really is identifying and addressing resource capacity and skill gaps within the IT group. Before you choose any solutions, engage your IT group to see how are we resourced and what are our skills. What skills does the IT team currently have and how well aligned are these to what we're trying to do? And then lastly, how well is IT offering their own employees to learn new skills needed for that future state? So as we're starting to identify what that future state looks like, are we enabling IT to extend the skills of their current employees? As we mentioned previously, the labor shortage is biting into IT's tenure and skills incredibly quickly. It's incredibly disruptive, and nothing is more disruptive than airport trying to achieve that future state and optimize processes like IT skills bleed and turnover.
Yeah. So throughout this whole conversation, I could see someone listening in and thinking, wait a minute, these guys are telling us that we need to be insourcing things and finding ways to bring things back inside our shop. But that's kind of contrary to the current trend where everyone's saying, hey, you need to outsource this and outsource that and try not to bring anything in house. So what are some of the areas that you think from your perspective that airports should be considering not to insource, or that other areas that airports should be considering to actually outsource?
Yeah, if you were looking at two different areas, if you looked at areas where you wanted to consider insourcing versus remain outsourcing, we go with this kind of a litmus that airports should consider insourcing all fee for service revenue streams if they have the needed technology platforms that can support automated transaction processing, especially on self reported billing data elements. A lot of fee for services are based off of a trigger event where the tenant or customer of the airport will self report their data, which drives a large manual process. So insource those fee for service revenue streams rather than have a third party process that for the airport. But you can only do that if you have the right platform that will support the automation. So needed platforms are things like a good cloud-based ERP with an open application programming interface or API, also a property and revenue management solution, and then the integration piece that we talked about before. The name for that is they call it an iPaaS because that's what technologists do, is to think of acronyms for everything, but it's an integration platform as a service that will integrate everything together. So that if you want to look at what should you insource, those are things that we like to look at. Looking at things for outsourcing, if you think of this, the other side of the litmus test, which is candidates for outsourcing if you're not doing it already, or if it's outsourced, leaving it there, are internal services that don't materially improve the passenger experience and can be integrated into airports' core technology solutions. For example, you could outsource a particular area that you're processing inside currently if you can bring the financial results of that outsourced transaction into your ERP solution. For example, don't outsource a service if it creates additional manual efforts needed to support the outsourcing. So sometimes taking something from inside and outsourcing it actually creates more inefficiencies in manual work. So we recommend leaving that inside.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Jim, for your time today to share your insights on digital advisory with our listeners. And I look forward to hearing you speak on process optimization at the AAAE Southeast Chapter's Finance and Administration Conference in February. Both Jim and I are excited to see everyone back in person in Daytona Beach this coming February. In addition to attending Jim's presentation, please stop by our table at the registration and break area and introduce yourselves to us. A quick disclaimer, Cherry Bekaert is not providing accounting, financial reporting, or tax advice on this podcast. Please consult with your accounting or tax advisors or Cherry Bekaert for more guidance. If you want more information about digital advisory or any topics that impact your airport, visit our Cherry Bekaert website at cbh.com. Thank you for joining us.